I was very pleased with myself as I pulled into the driveway and pressed the garage door opener. Addie's car was already in the garage, which was nothing new since she was always home before me. She was cooking dinner, and I was trying to decide if I should surprise her before dinner, during dinner, or maybe after dinner, when we sat on the patio and chatted about our day. Our 25th wedding anniversary was in 3 weeks, so I got busy and found a 2-week cruise. We both had a lot of vacation time left, and I couldn't think of a better way to burn off some of it than by spending 2 weeks on a romantic cruise. The timing couldn't have been better, as the last of our 3 children had just gotten married, and Addie and I were alone for the first time in 21 years. It's time to spice up our relationship, bring back the spark, or, to put it a little more crudely, have some hot monkey sex. It's not that there's anything missing in our sex life. We still manage to have it on average twice a week. But with kids around, it wasn't the spontaneous sex we had before we became parents. Feedings, and then school activities as the children got older, and then as they got even older, extracurricular activities. There were times when it was difficult, if not almost impossible, for us to find time for each other, but now those times are over. Barry was married and living in California, Marcia had graduated from State University and was working in Atlanta, and Ralph had just married his high school sweetheart, and they were moving to Ohio for a new position that Ralph had been promoted to. Yes, indeed, there is no better time for a romantic cruise. Addie was setting the table when I entered the room. I walked up to her, hugged and kissed her, and then went to take off my work clothes and put on shorts and a t-shirt. Over dinner, Addie told me that she had spoken with Ralph and that he and his fiancée had arrived safely in Akron and were unloading their luggage at their new apartment. Addie said that Susan, Ralph's wife, told her all about the apartment and the area. It looks like they'll be happy there. She put down her fork, took a deep breath, and then asked, "You know that I love you, don't you?" When I smiled at her and said, "Of course I know," alarm bells started ringing in my head. That line, "You know I love you, don't you?" ranks right up there with, "Does this dress make me look fat?" and "Honey, is my butt getting bigger?" And I said to myself, "Oh God, what did she do now? Did you hit something with your car? Made a mistake in the checkbook? And now we have an overdraft?" It was a phrase husbands didn't want to hear. She looked away for a second or so, and then turned to me and said, "Sally wants me to go with her tomorrow evening. Something like a bachelorette party or a party." She bit her lip and then said, "No, Rob, on a date." "Date? What kind of date is this?" "Her boyfriend's cousin is in town visiting and she wants me to go on a date with them." "Sally wants you to go on a date with a guy? Is she crazy or just stupid?" I told her I would do it. "Did you tell her that you would be dating another man? Have you forgotten that you are a married woman, Adelaide?" "No, I haven't forgotten, Rob. I need you to listen to me on this. Listen to me and remember that I love you and want to spend my life with you. All these years that we were married, Rob, and they were wonderful years. I never had a climax. I started to open my mouth, but she raised her hand in a stop gesture and said, 'Let me finish. I love making love to you, but I never had a climax. I've read about them, and girls I know always talk about them, but I've never had one. I'll be 45 in a month, and I want a climax before it's too late. And you expect me to just go along with this madness? Are you crazy?' It won't hurt us, Rob. I still love you. It's just something I want to do for myself. It's already hurt us, Adelaide, or at least it's hurt me. 3 weeks until our 25th wedding anniversary, and you finally take the time to tell me that I'm a lousy lover and that I'm no good in the bedroom. Thanks, Adelaide. I really needed this." I stood up and Adelaide asked, "Where are you going? Get out. Please, Rob, And everything she was still going to say was interrupted by the door closing behind me. I drove to Bud's Bar and Grill and sat on a stool at the counter. I told Mavis to get me a beer, and then I sat there, drank it, and reviewed my life up to that point to see if I could come up with something that would alert me that my wife wasn't happy with my performance in bedroom. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't come up with anything. Neither Adelaide nor I were virgins when we met, and we took to each other like ducklings to water. The lovemaking was full of enthusiasm and satisfaction, and Adelaide always wanted to do more. We had only been dating for a month when Adelaide asked me to move in with her, and then it was sex almost every night, and Adelaide seemed to really enjoy what I did for her. She was so satisfied that 6 months after we started living together, she began hinting at marriage. Based on how well we got along while living together, I thought we would make a strong couple. Until that night, I thought we had a wonderful marriage, and everything changed in less than half an hour. Adelaide told me that I hadn't done my job in over 25 years. It was a damn big blow to my ego, my pride as a man. But the worst thing was that my wife thought so little of me that she thought she could tell me that she was going to date another man and have sex with him, and that I would just sit there and go along with it. "What's going on, Rob?" Mavis asked, placing the 5th beer in front of me. "It's not like you to just sit here and drink, staring into space and peeling labels off beer bottles." "I have bad news tonight, Maeve. I just found out that my marriage has been a joke for over 25 years, and as you can see, the news was devastating to me. Are you and Addie having problems?" "You could say that, Maeve." I drank the beer in front of me in one gulp, put the bottle on the counter, and then said, "I better get out of here while I can still drive." I didn't go home. I drove to Stevens Point and looked at the lake until I started nodding off, and then I drove home. When I got there, the house was dark. I went to the linen closet in the hallway, grabbed a pillow and blanket, and then lay down on the sofa. This morning, I woke up with a bad taste in my mouth and didn't brush my teeth because I didn't want to make noise to wake Adelaide. I really didn't want to face her that morning. I left the house, had breakfast at the IHOP down the street from where I work, and then went to work. It wasn't a good day. I spent most of that time thinking about what I would say to Adelaide when I got home that evening. It didn't promise to be pretty. Adelaide's car wasn't in the garage when I got home, which was strange because she always got home before me. When I walked into the kitchen, the first thing I saw was the flashing red light on the answering machine. When I approached him, I saw a note on the kitchen table. It said, "Meatloaf in the microwave. Give him 3 minutes. Do not wait for me. Love you, Addie." I pressed a button on the answering machine, and a mechanical voice said, "You have 1 new message and 1 old message. First new message, Thursday, 5 to 17 p.m. And my sister's voice came to remind me that we were supposed to get together to discuss what we were going to get our mom for her birthday, and the voice said, "End of messages." I pressed the button again, and the voice said, "You have 1 old message, Thursday, 5 on a.1 p.m. "Hey, girlfriend," Sally said, "plans change. We'll meet at Tomasino's bar at 6 instead of the restaurant. Kevin looks forward to meeting you. See you." I stood staring at the car for what seemed like an eternity, but it must have only been 20 or 30 seconds, and then I walked over to the microwave, took out what Adelaide had made for me for dinner, and then threw it at the wall. It took me a little over 3.5 hours to pack everything I wanted and load it into my pickup truck, and I left the house at 10:35. I spent the night at the motel, had breakfast at Denny's, and at 8, I called my boss and told him I'd be back late. By 10 o'clock, I had cleared out all the bank accounts, cashed in 5 certificates of deposit, and canceled all but 2 of our credit cards, which I had in my name only. At 10:15, the power of attorney was sent by registered mail from the lawyer to Adelaide, along with a note saying that she should sell the house and take the money, since the amount would be equal to what I took. Adelaide's finances would be tight until she could sell the house. But fuck her. That's how I perceived it. Next stop was canceling my cell phone contract, and then I went to Walmart and bought a cell phone within 500 minutes. At 11:30, I was sitting in my boss's office. After he told me that Adelaide had already called 5 times trying to reach me, I told him I was leaving and told him why. He told me he understood, and then told me that his brother needed someone with my abilities and asked me if I wanted to move out of state. 3 hours later, I was on my way to Denver and working for Sam's brother Dave. At 6 in the evening, I stopped at the rest area, called my parents, sister, and children, and told them all that I had left and why. My sister never really liked Adelaide, and I never knew why, but it just felt easier to give her my number, along with instructions, not to give it to anyone for any reason. I didn't give it to my children because I knew they would give it to their mother, and I didn't give it to my parents for the same reason. They always loved Adelaide very much. I told them all that I would call them once a week. I told my kids straight up that I wouldn't tell them where I was or give them my phone number because I didn't trust them to keep it away from their mother, and they weren't very happy with me. I stopped by the Mississippi River long enough to take off my wedding ring and throw it as far into the moving current as I could, then got back in my truck and headed down I-70 toward Denver. When I got to Denver, I drove to my new job and checked in, then went looking for a place to live. I found an apartment close to work and settled there. Every Friday night I called my kids, parents, and sister to see how things were going. For the first 2 months, every call to the children ended with them begging me to call their mother. She was miserable, she was distraught, and she was hopeless. I finally told them that I had no intention of ever speaking to their mother again, and if they continued to pester me about her, I would call them once a month. My sister Bev never asked me to call Addie, but she told me that Adelaide kept begging her to connect Adelaide to me. I told her that nothing had changed, and I still had no intention of ever speaking to my wife again. My parents were the ones who really pissed me off, although it was probably my mom more than my dad. One Friday I called them, my mom answered, and we talked for a few minutes. I heard some noise in the background, and then, "Rob," said Adelaide's voice. "Please, dear." I hung up, and 2 months passed before I called my parents again. It was painful. I loved her for so long, and in fact, I still loved her, but I couldn't have anything to do with her after what she did. Gradually, over the following months, all mention of Adelaide disappeared. I never asked about her, and no one talked about her. I didn't worry about getting a divorce because I didn't see any point in wasting money. At my age, getting married again was out of the question, so I didn't need to be single again. If there was a divorce, it would be because Addie would go for it, and while she didn't know where I was to be served, her only option was to divorce me for desertion, and that didn't bother me at all. There were a few women around my age where I worked, and a couple of them showed interest in me, and I started dating. I behaved well on these dates because I thought it would be unwise to start something with a coworker. What if it didn't work? Working together would be awkward. On my third date with Jolene, she asked me what my story was, and I said, "What do you mean by my story?" By the end of the second date, I usually fight off the guy's advances, and here we are on our third date, and you haven't even tried to kiss me goodnight. You must like me a little. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had our third date. Tell me... I told her about my feelings about workplace romances, and she laughed and said, "Bullshit. In the 10 years I've worked here, I've slept with 4 guys who work with me. Do you see that I have some problems with my colleagues?" As far as I can tell, no. The reason I don't see any of them anymore is because each of them wanted to marry me, and that's not what I'm interested in. I want sex, without serious commitment. And as long as you don't obsess over me and try to get me to marry you, we can play together for as long as you want. When I drove her home that evening, I wanted to kiss her on the cheek, and she grabbed my tie and pulled me towards her. Jolene was the first woman other than Adelaide that I had touched in 25 years, and I had to admit that I was scared. I wasn't scared enough to run away, and I needed to, but I was scared because of how Adelaide made me feel inadequate. I warned Jolene that I might be in a bit of a hurry due to my long, dry spell, and she grinned evilly at me and said, "Then we better hurry up and get it out of the way first." It wasn't as fast as I thought, and my recovery time wasn't that long either. I was making love to Jolene, and at some point she cried out sharply, and her body trembled and shuddered. If this is what the climax was like, then I guess it's probably something I've never seen with my wife. Jolene noticed the way I was looking at her and asked what was wrong. "Nothing," I answered, "but I'm curious. Did you just climax? Did I have a climax? 2 small and 1 large? Why are you so interested?" I told her my story, and she said, "I can tell you about it, lover. The problem must be with her, because it sure as hell isn't with you." She began to caress me, and we set off again. After the 3rd time, I told her that I needed to go so I could get some sleep before getting up for work, and she said, "Shut up, my love. There's nothing I love more than waking up next to a warm man's body and then starting the day right." Jolene's idea to start the day right was to wake me up by caressing my manhood, followed by hot morning sex. She fed me a hearty breakfast, and then we went to work together. It was a great day for me, and I walked around in a fantastic mood. Jolene lifted me out of the hole that Adelaide's comments had driven me into. Her words, plus the image of her actually climaxing, did wonders for me. After that night, Jolene and I started talking regularly. We spent so much time in each other's company and in each other's beds that after about 6 months, I suggested we move in together. Jolene rejected this. The reason I never got married, honey, is because I can't stand living with anyone. I tried this a couple of times, and it just didn't work. I like living alone. Everything is going well for us, so let's just be happy with it. A year has passed, and many changes have occurred. Barry and his wife Nancy had a little girl, Ralph's wife Betsy was expecting a child, and Marcia became engaged. They all wanted to see me, and I wanted to see them. The problem was that I hadn't worked long enough at my job to accumulate enough vacation time to allow me to visit California, Georgia, and Ohio. I managed to take a couple of days off to visit my parents and sister, but they quickly passed, and although my mother insisted that I talk to Adelaide while I was there, and probably even called her to let her know I was there, I returned to Denver before Addie could respond to the information. I was afraid to let them visit me. Once they know where I am, it will only be a matter of time before one of them spills the beans to Adelaide. I was trying to figure out what to do when things got out of my control. My sister called me and told me that our parents had died in a car accident. There was no way I could avoid meeting Adelaide at the funeral. She was very close to my mom and dad and will no doubt be at the funeral home and most likely at the wake to be held later at Bev's house. I spent a few hours at the funeral home making arrangements and then went to Bud's bar to calm down a little. Mavis was filling me in on what had been going on since I'd been gone when Adelaide slid onto the stool next to me and said, "Hi, Rob. How are you doing?" "Very good, Addie. How is the search for climaxes going?" Before she could respond, Mavis appeared and Adelaide ordered a vodka tonic. Mavis looked at me and asked, "Total score?" "No. The lady pays for herself." Adelaide flinched at this and then said to me, "There was no sex." Good old Kevin, not able to get the job done the first time. "There was no Kevin, Rob. I didn't go through this. If you would let me talk to you, I would be able to tell you this. I wouldn't believe you, so there was no point in talking to you." "It's true, Rob. Nothing happened." "That's how it was, Adelaide. It took me just over 4 hours to load my truck and get ready to leave. According to Sally's post, you met her and your fuck toy at 6. If you came back to the house by 7 and said you were home because you just couldn't get through it, I might, just might, believe you, but there was no way, no fucking way, for me to believe you. If you were gone for 3 or more hours, and you were already gone for more than 4 when I left. Even if I believed you, it wouldn't change anything. Our relationship had already died the night you told me what you were going to do. You didn't even have to have sex with Kevin to end our marriage, because by the time you met him, our marriage was over. You ruined our marriage when you told me what you really thought about me." "What are you talking about, Rob?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Adelaide." "No, I don't know. You showed me how little you thought about me when you told me what you were going to do, and then expected me to just sit quietly. It told me what your real opinion of me was, a spineless weakling that you could bully and force me to accept. There was no way in hell we could have had any meaningful relationship after that. No, Adelaide, talking to you wouldn't change anything." "Oh my God, Rob, I never thought about anything like that. I thought I could convince you to let me do something for myself. I thought we loved each other enough that I could show you that if you let me do this, it wouldn't hurt us at all. I didn't mean long-term or anything like that. Just one time to see what it was like, but you got up and ran out before I could state my case." "Be serious, Adelaide. My reaction to what you told me told you everything you needed to know about how I felt about the idea, but you went anyway. What if Kevin hadn't brought you to climax? Who would you try next? How many more times would you like to try to get that climax?" "It wouldn't be like that, Rob. I swear it wouldn't be like that. You say it now, Adelaide, but it's after the fact, and I don't believe it. If you were willing to risk your marriage to try on Kevin, and given the slightest chance I would go along with it and he wouldn't, you'd think that if I let you get away with it once, I would probably let you try again. And even if I had given up on the second try, you would have done what you did with Kevin and just left again. If only there was one more meatloaf in the oven, and don't wait for me. What can I do to convince you that you are wrong about this? How can I convince you that nothing happened between me and Kevin? You can't, Adelaide. What you could have done, what you should have done, is come to me with your problems when you had them, so that we could work on them together to see if we could do something to solve the problems, but you didn't do this. You ambushed me. Let me ask you this question, Adelaide. Have any of the men you've been in bed with since I left brought you to climax? It's disgusting to say such things. I haven't slept with anyone since the last time I was with you. Knowing how much you liked sex, oh yes, I believe it. Damn it, Rob, it's true. I came home and found you gone, and it killed me. I fell to pieces and was hopeless for several months. When I finally pulled myself together, I knew without a doubt that if you came back and found that I was in bed with another man, there would be no chance of me ever getting you back. I swear to God I didn't have anyone. I love you, Rob. I need you. I need to be with you. It's just too bad you didn't feel that way and think that way the day you left the house to meet Kevin. I slid off the stool and walked out of the tavern. Of course, it didn't end there. All 3 children flew in for the funeral, and my sister's house became the place where the family gathered. I saw my granddaughter for the first time and met Marcia's fiancé. The conversations were of a general nature, and carefully avoided conversations between Addie and me. Adelaide was at the funeral home every time I went there, but as soon as she walked toward me, I moved in the other direction. It wasn't easy to avoid her. For more than 25 years, we have been a part of each other's lives. I loved her selflessly and did not deceive myself. I still loved her. Seeing her and knowing that everything was over between us tore my soul. After the funeral, Bev had a wake, and of course Addie came to it. It was harder to avoid Addie there than at the funeral home and cemetery because every time she came near me, one of our children was with her. If I had been smart, I would have left the wake, went to the bar, and sat there until it was over. But, unfortunately, with the departure of my parents, I became the head of the family and was obliged to stay until the end. As the last of the sympathizers left the wake, Barry, Ralph, and Marcia cornered me, and Barry said, "We need to talk, Dad." "Okay, go ahead." "Not here. We need a place that is a little more private." "For what?" "There is no one here except family, or those who are going to become family. The rest of the family doesn't need to hear this." Bev, who was standing behind me, told us we could use her sewing room, so the 4 of us went in and closed the door. "Okay," I said, "let's do it. You need to stop this crap with your mom. You are still married to each other, and she needs you. You need to go home with her." I started talking, but he raised his hand and said, "Let me finish. Mom told us what she did, and all 3 of us thought she had to be brain dead to think she could hit you with it and not expect any consequences. And what's more, we told her so. But she didn't go for it. She pulled her head out of her ass just in time to retreat and return home to you. That's what she says. But if she didn't go through with it, what did she do from the time she was supposed to meet her new boyfriend in bed at 6 until she got home? I wasn't packed, loaded, and ready to leave until almost 11. It's been over 4 hours since I was still in the house, and she wasn't home when I finally left. There is no way I can be sure that nothing happened during those hours, but it does not matter. As I told her the last time we spoke, our marriage ended when she told me what she was going to do. This is the key, and remember, she told me what she was going to do. Forget the blow to my ego, my male pride. Our marriage collapsed when she told me how low she really thought of me. Mom told us what you told her at Murphy's, but Dad, you're full of crap. Mom didn't tell you anything like that. It was just the way you chose to interpret what she said. You were angry with her from the very beginning when she told you that she never had a climax. You took this as a blow to your manhood and moved on. Why the hell didn't you look her in the eye and tell her maybe it wasn't your fault? Why did you just put up with it? Why didn't you fight back instead of running away in anger? Why the hell did you let 5 minutes ruin a 25-year marriage? It was a wonderful marriage. We all knew this. You knew that. Mom just listened to a bunch of girlfriends and let what they told her make her stupid. Marcia entered the conversation. You were a little brainless yourself, Dad. The father I grew up with would look my mother in the eye and say, "Fuck you. It will be over my dead body." And then he would attack the problem. I looked at my youngest. Are you going to jump on me too, Ralph? It is not necessary. All I'd like to do is say what Barry and Marcia have already said, except I might put a little more emphasis on what Marcia said. The father who raised me would not have run away. He would have fought back. Well, I'm sorry that I disappointed you all so much, but nothing has changed. You weren't there when your mother looked me straight in the eyes and told me she was going on a date with another man to see if he could bring her to climax. She didn't get nervous, didn't stutter, and didn't look away from me. She calmly and thoughtfully told me that she was going to have sex with another man. To answer the question why I did not resist, I will simply say that at that moment I didn't want this. If she could do this to me after 25 years, then, as far as I understood, I had nothing to fight for. Frankly, at that moment I didn't want to look at your mother anymore. I didn't run away, as you so elegantly put it, in a rage. Your mother ruined our marriage, and there was no point in staying here with her anymore. And there could be no solution to the problem because as soon as your mother went on that date, in my mind she became an unfaithful slut. She claims she came to her senses and didn't go through with it, but I don't believe it. Not for 1 minute. She wasn't home when I returned from work. She met her lover at 6 and was still gone when I left shortly before 11. Get this firmly ingrained in your heads. Your mother ruined our marriage. I have nothing to do with this. I'm moving on with my life, and I'm happy where this life is now, and I see no reason to change it. I'm sorry your mother is unhappy in her situation, but she did it herself. As far as I understand, the issue is closed, and I do not intend to return to it again. Are we all clear on this? Sorry, Dad, Barry said, but I have to take Mom's side on this. Me too, Marcia said. I looked at Ralph, and he just looked at me and shrugged. So be it, I said and left the room. I said goodnight to Bev and went to the room I was using. I packed my things, got everything ready to leave in the morning, and then went to bed. How did you cope with everything? Jolene asked me on my first day of work. Badly. Burying my parents was hard enough, but my wife was always there, and that only made it worse. Then my kids attacked me, trying to get back together with her, and when I said no, they told me they were on her side. In general, the trip was not at all pleasant. Well, honey, you need to look at this from the other side. Which? Is there another side to this? You're back, and your stress reliever is sitting here, ready to relieve that stress. She relieved my stress several times that evening after work and then did everything she could to relieve that stress for the rest of the week. And I was glad to be able to say she got the job done. 2 months flew by unnoticed. The work was going well. My relationship with Jolene was going well. And then life got complicated again. I was having dinner with Jolene at Angelina's when Adelaide came to our table and poured a glass of water over Jolene's head. This is my husband, with whom you are sitting, a tramp, and if you don't get away from him, I will claw your eyes out. Jolene had a margarita in her hand and threw the drink in Adelaide's face, then jumped out of her seat in a flash. She slammed her open palm hard into Adelaide's face, causing Adelaide to stagger, and then Adelaide lowered her head and lunged at Jolene. There was a lot of hair pulling, slapping, screaming, and yelling. It took 3 of us to separate them, and when that was done, Andre, the head waiter, politely but firmly asked us to leave. No problem, Andre, just hold her, I said, pointing at Adelaide, until we leave. I don't want to continue this in the parking lot. I took Jolene's hand, and we left. When we got into the car, Jolene said, "You didn't tell me that you brought your wife with you when you returned from the funeral. I have no idea how she ended up here. Of course, I didn't bring her with me. I can't even imagine why she's here. Don't be stupid, Rob, even though I know why she's here. You know? Then please enlighten me. She's here to fight for you. She told you this when she gave me a bath. What do you mean? I believe her exact words were, "This is my husband you are sitting with." And she put a lot of emphasis on the "my husband" part. She stated her rights in no uncertain terms. I do not believe in this. More than once I let her know in no uncertain terms that it was all over between us. She obviously decided that it wasn't so. We were silent the rest of the way to her house. As I walked her to the door, I said, "I'm sorry that the evening was ruined and that you had to go through that." "This is wrong. It was the most fun I've had in years." She pulled me into the bedroom and said, "All we have to do now is give this night the perfect ending." She was wild and insatiable. Throwing water on her and starting a fight must have ignited something in her, and she continued to pester me until I could no longer answer her call. The irony when I thought about it was that she had gotten into an argument with a woman who told me I couldn't make her climax. But that night Jolene had more climaxes than I could remember. I fell asleep in Jolene's arms. In the morning, Jolene woke me up and we had fantastic sex again. When we finished, she propped herself up on her elbow and kissed me. "Thank you, my love. It was the perfect ending." "Thank you, baby. It was a pleasure. I won't be in the office today. I'm meeting with clients, so I won't see you until this evening." "Nothing else will happen, lover." When I said it was a perfect ending, I was talking about our personal relationship. "Why? What have I done?" "You didn't do anything, love, but when I looked into your wife's eyes tonight, I saw that she was determined to get you back. I won't be the one to stand in her way." "That doesn't make sense, Jolene." "I told you, she's finished. Perhaps as far as you are concerned, but not as far as she is concerned. She obviously decided that she would get you back, despite what you told her. I will not interfere with such strong love. I've never made a secret of where we are, Rob. Good friends and bed buddies, and that's all it was ever meant to be. If your wife fights for you, she will not fight with me." When I returned to my house, I found Adelaide sitting on the steps of my porch. "What the hell are you doing here, Adelaide?" "You are my husband, Rob. Where are you going and all that stuff? How did you find me?" "While you were at Bev's, Marcia snuck into your room while you were showering and took the information from your driver's license. And by the way, you should really call your kids. They need to hear from you from time to time. They made their choice at the funeral and they can live with it, but why did you bother coming here?" "I told you exactly how I feel about what happened. I noticed that despite what you said, you did not divorce me. Why waste money? I don't need to be single since I never plan to get married again. That's good because I would have fought it and all we would have achieved was helping two lawyers maintain their standard of living. Why would you struggle to keep someone in your life who doesn't want you? How about it because I want you? I loved you for more than 25 years and never stopped loving you. Okay, maybe I was being stupid when I thought that with 25 wonderful years tying us together, you would give me a little leeway in what I wanted to try. After all, it was just supposed to be sex. There would be no romance, and it would only happen once. If it hadn't brought me to climax 2, I would have decided that I was the problem. That's like saying that if you climaxed with him, the problem would be me, and in your opinion, I would become less masculine because I wouldn't be able to do my job. What if the climax was so wonderful that you just had to experience more of it? What then? I thought about these things, Rob, and that's part of the reason I never went through it. Call me naive or just plain stupid, but I honestly thought I could convince you to let me try it once and that it wouldn't hurt us. When I met Kevin, he was nice enough, but I got the feeling he thought I was just some married tramp having a good time and cheating on her husband. As the evening wore on, the thought kept lingering in my mind, and I finally realized that cheating on you is exactly what I would do if I went through with it. If you had said okay when I brought it up, it wouldn't have been cheating, but you didn't say okay. You just ran out of the house. I couldn't go through with it. When the dinner, drinks, and dancing were over, Sally suggested we all go to her house, and I told them I would meet them there, but I got in the car and drove straight home. I got there at 10:45, but you weren't there. I saw the sauce on the wall and the dinner I left for you on the floor. I thought you must have gone to the bar, so I sat down and waited for you to come home. When you weren't home at 3:30, I got up to go to bed, and that's when I noticed that your things were missing. I was blown to pieces. I did nothing but drink and dance that night, Rob, and I haven't had a man since the last time you and I made love. The problem is that I don't believe you, Adelaide. I'm ready to take a lie detector test, Rob. If you can find someone to do it, I'll even inject my arm with truth serum. And that leaves only two things. Complete nonsense because I thought you were a weakling, and that you were less of a man because you never drove me crazy until the climax. There's no way I could have spent 25 years with you if you were a spineless weakling. If this was what I thought about you, you would have seen plenty of evidence of it long before that night. Think about it, Rob. Could we have had 25 wonderful years if I had not loved and respected you as a man, husband, and father? The same applies to the climax. Have you ever thought that maybe instead of you not being able to give it to me, it was I who was not being able to have it? I wanted to see what it was like, to experience it for myself, and I asked you to let me try. I never once said that you were not courageous enough or that you lacked something. I just said that I never had one. Now I understand that it was an idiotic thing to do, but I was sure that in 25 years you would understand that I loved you and did not humiliate you. I love you, Rob. I need you. Please, Rob, please let me back into your life. My life is here now, Adelaide. Like mine, Rob. I quit my job, put my house on the market, and moved here. There was no way I could bring you back from 900 miles away. I looked at her for a few seconds and then said, I'm not promising anything, Adelaide, but maybe we can date for a while and see what happens. She rushed to me and started crying. You won't regret it, Rob. I promise you that you won't regret it. We met once or twice a week for about a month, and then it was 3 or 4 times a week. 4 months later, Addie moved in with me, and 5 months later, it was as if nothing had happened. She seemed to have made it her life's work to pamper me. We made love 4 and 5 times a week, and although I never brought her to climax, it was never mentioned. My relationship with my children is still a little strained. I'm not at all happy that they sided with their mother. I didn't expect them to side with me, but I at least expected them to remain neutral. Jolene and I are still good friends, and at our company picnic, she walked up to Addie and told her she was glad we were back together. They hit it off and started having lunch together a couple times a month. We even go dancing from time to time with Jolene and whoever happens to be her current bed buddy. It was one of those nights when I was dancing with Jolene and she said, "Are you glad I kicked you out of my bed?" Very. I knew it was right. She's obviously good for you. You've become much calmer since you got back to her. Adelaide. I watched Rob dance with Jolene and thanked God for the 1,000th time that my gamble had paid off. I prayed that Rob wouldn't accept my offer to take a lie detector test. There was no way in hell I could have gone through with it because that night I went to bed with Kevin and we had sex 3 times before I got home at 2:30 in the morning to find Rob gone. Kevin didn't bring me to climax, nor did most of the dozen or so others who followed him. 2 of them were good, and while I enjoyed them, they couldn't replace the love I received from Rob on a regular basis. A year and a half wasted looking for something that had already been found once turned out to be not worth the search costs. When the music ended, I saw Jolene lean over and kiss Rob on the cheek, and as they walked back to the table, I thought how lucky I was that she was the woman she was. If she was the type who wanted to get married, I definitely wouldn't bring Rob back. But I did get him back, and it would be a cold day in hell before I let him go again. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.